Today we're continuing our look at the magic of Deadlands, mostly classic, but also a lot we're going to say applies to Deadlands Reloaded as well, or whatever other version for the most part. Last time we talked to Hucksters. Today we're going to talk about Mad Science and the Mad Scientist player character option. So, Mad Science, you might think, well, what does that have to do with magic? It's obviously science and all scientific. Well, okay, so basically, the Great Quake of '68, which I talked about before, opened up all these fault lines along the coast of California, and they found this magical thing called ghost rock. It's like a super coal, which burns really, really hot, a lot of energy, and for a very long time. That's the important part. Also has these like ghostly images of smoke and whatever that comes from it. Makes kind of moaning and howling noises, but it's a whole new type of power source, really efficient and effective, and so all these new types of technology have cropped up from it, very steampunk style. I think the first one was, what do they call it? There's a special name for it. A horseless carriage called a steam wagon. It's a car. They made a car powered by ghost rock. Now, not only does it make like spooky noises and make spooky ghost phases in the smoke, apparently, as it generates energy while burning, but also, even though the mad scientist, the person who works with it, doesn't realize it, there is a connection to the evil spirit, the Manitou, who are sort of communicating more at the subconscious level with the scientist as he's exploring the possibilities of new technology he can make with this power source. And as you might imagine, exposure to evil spirits whispering in your head without you even realizing it. Well, you're on the frontier of science, and think of all the good in the world that you can do. You can change the world forever and save millions of lives all over the world with your great scientific discovery. You're not going to notice just how insane you're slowly or quickly getting as time goes on. So every bit of magic in this game has a bad side effect. That's a long-term one with this mad science anyway. Also, I guess your mad science inventions can just break and go wrong. That's another great side effect. Anyway, in at least this version of the game, in order to become a mad scientist, you need that arcane background and the mad scientist part of it. Also, you need aptitudes in, let's see here, mad science, at least one level, as well as tinkering if you actually want to build the things that you design. If you don't have tinkering, you can't build it. You can just make designs and then get someone else to build it. Also, you kind of need to start as like a normal scientist beforehand, so you need at least one rank in an aptitude of science. So general biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, whatever. So there's a few more prereqs than Huckster had. But once you have all this, you've made your character and you want to start building, there's a couple steps. You have to, number one, concoct a theory. Number two, devise a blueprint, gather the components, and then actually construct the device. Concocting the theory is more you, and ideally you would do this sort of in character, just what it is you're trying to do and the scientific theories and principles behind it. I don't know, you want to make a freeze ray, and because of the tachyons of the time-space continuum, cold stuff happens in science. I don't know any science, so I'm obviously very awful at this type of character, but you can come up with just a bunch of the vaguely scientific-sounding gibberish, technobabble, or whatever else. Ramblings of a madman in order to just, what is your device in the general sense? Then you devise a blueprint where you actually do a check, and the better you roll the check, the more reliable the device is going to be. And if you fail, there's a time limit until you can try to design again while you clear your head, which is good. You can't just keep trying to design a thing over and over and over again, otherwise what's the point of even rolling a check? And finally, your science aptitude that you picked, or you might have more than one, is going to come into play. If what you're trying to design isn't related to chemistry, if that's what your focus was, or engineering if that's what your focus was, maybe you're making that carriage, what do they call it, steam wagon, you're trying to design your own type of steam wagon. If you don't have your aptitude science in engineering, well, it's going to be even harder to do. So what type of scientist you were is going to have an impact on how easy it is to make your mad science stuff. But as I talked about in character creation like a year ago, you can have multiple aptitudes, and it's kind of easy to do it. Multiple specializations of the science aptitude. So that can make things a bit easier for you if you're a dedicated scientist. Next, you need to gather the relevant components for your device, talk to your GM or marshal, Talk to them. They might have a list of things that you need. They might say, well, some stuff you can get at the general store. It costs this amount of money, and you just do it, or you take the time to roleplay through it, whatever. And then he might say, well, you need this and this, and it could be an adventure unto itself to find this and this, whatever this and this is. But also part of your theory should kind of imply or outright say the types of components that would be necessary to what it is you're trying to do. So I think it works best as you working with the GM to figure out what would be most relevant to this particular device, and then he might tell you what you need, what you have easy access, what you don't have easy access to. Maybe you need to travel across state lines to get a particular thing. Who knows? Anyway, then you actually construct the device, you roll the check. If time's a factor, you can rush the job to make it harder on you, but quicker. And also, the better you roll, the more reliable the device itself is going to be. Now, unfortunately, although I'm kind of mixed on whether or not it's unfortunately or fortunately, I think net, it's an unfortunate thing for me. There is no, like, chart where you're going to build a steam wagon or a Gatling gun or a bulletproof vest or a flamethrower or something, and here's the base stats for it if you just succeed in the minimum extent, but also if you roll really well, you can add this extra feature, that feature, this feature, that feature. None of that, not in the core book anyway. They have a few sample devices that you can build, and you could always use that as sort of a jumping off point. Use the flamethrower as a jumping off point to figure out what the stats are for your ice gun, your Mr. Freeze ice cannon or something. Maybe it does less damage, half the damage that the flamethrower does, but it slows down people's speed or something, or maybe it just makes rough terrain, or whatever this game calls rough terrain, or something like that. You can use a device as a jumping off point if it's kind of sort of similar, but if you have something new, how do you know what its stats are? You have... Not every sample device they have is going to cover everything. If I were playing this kind of character, or GMing a game with this kind of character, I would really feel way under-equipped if I didn't have the, what do they call it? Smiths and Robards, the supplemental source book, which most of these supplemental source books, each one of the Magic users has one, and there's, of course, a bunch of other source books. Most of them are like $20 each. Small price to pay for a source book for a game that's been out of print forever. But still, yeah, I would feel really, really underprepared to play or GM a character without that. I don't even know what's in it. I just know that I really want more than this. It's kind of a shame. Still, though, this kind of character could be really fun to play. There's so many different variations. There's a few edges that stick out in my mind of what you could pick to help bring your character more to life. I like the rank edge, where you take 1 to 5 ranks in it, 1 to 5 ranks in rank, and that will determine how high a rank you were or are in the military. If you're in the military, you have a certain amount of respect or authority, depending on what you are. But in this case, I kind of like the idea of a really specific type of character. Someone who was a part of that Southern Confederate Area 51 thing I talked about in, I think, the lore video or whatever it was. And then for whatever reason, maybe moral reasons, or just you wanted to use your scientific expertise to better your own station in life, get rich and be free out in the West building stuff. From whatever reason, you sort of defected from the Confederacy. You're no longer a military scientist, but you do have that background and rank. Well, I guess you couldn't really get the benefits of rank then. Only in rare circumstances. It depends on your campaign, I suppose. Talk with your GM if that makes sense. Another good one to get is, what is it? Tinkering, I think it's called? Mechanically inclined. It's just a 1-point edge. It gives you a bit of a edge with mechanical stuff, including tinkering and mad science checks, as long as it has to do with fixing or understanding technology. That's the main focus. But you get a bit of help with checks with that. That's probably something that just about any mad scientist type of character is gonna wanna get. There's also two that deal with money, belongings and dinero. They can help you with resources to build your stuff, to pay for, to gather things, to build whatever device you want to build. They work in slightly different ways. That's it for today. If you like this and want to see more, next time we're going to talk about the Blessed.